Right. So, what we discussed in the previous sessions were all completely about enterprise architecture part I have discussed with you. So, when we talk about enterprise architecture, as I told you, understanding over the enterprise of any organization, which is interconnected with multiple things. Either it can be business architecture, it can be applications architecture because the kind of applications they use is right. So all these things are comes under applications architecture. At the same time, what kind of data they were using and how this data is transforming, that will be taken into consideration. Followed by this systems architecture. What are the different systems are we using, right? So these are the things which normally we see when we talk about enterprise architecture part. But now, today onwards, we are going to discuss about why solution architecture is important for a project. On a general note, if you see solution architecture, create a roadmap for the technical team because they don't understand the business requirements properly. In a simple note, I say, of course, there are some detailed points. Let me explain that. But on a high level, on a simple note, if you understand solution architecture is important for us to make technical team to understand the technical understanding over the solution, what is that they were about to develop. Because whatever the understanding level initially, whenever in the initial stages of the project, if you see, so that level is completely a functional level because there are some business team members will be there, they who will be understood the business problem, right? So they're trying to understand and assessing about what problem customer is facing, how intense the problem is, what kind of assumptions and dependencies it might arise when we are developing the solution. At the same time, what sort of solution is customer expecting? Everything from the functional perspective they understand. From the business team point of view, I'm talking about. It can be of any domain, it can be of any technology. Of course, technology comes next, it can be of any domain. But when it comes to the solution architecture, whatever the understanding over the requirements from functional and non-functional point of view, or else it can be non-functional, it can be like, it can be performance, right? So it can be load balancing, it can be fault tolerancing. Fault tolerancing is a concept which you can connect with microservices also, because fault tolerancing where if there is any fault which was arised in a particular component, so it won't get affected with the whole application. It will be affected only to a particular component where we can make some changes out of it, right? So because your application won't get affected, the other application. This is what we call it as fault tolerance all about. So non-functional requirements are also essentially important because non-functional requirements majorly gives you a note of high level performance of the application, how application is performing. Because end of the day, performance of the application matters a lot. How well the application was built, how well the application was presented to the team members, presented to the end users. As long as application is performing not well as customer is expecting, then there will be no point in developing solution no matter what technology we have used on it. So solution architects or solution architecture is a concept where we have to define the solution for a particular business problem from the technical side, not from the functional side. Because functional side, business teams will take care of. But whereas when it comes to the solution architecture from the technical side, this will be taken care of by the solution architect team. They will be doing this. Again, the solution architecture or solution architecture, whatever are we developing usually, There are some slight differences from on-premise application to a cloud applications. Because if you see in our industry nowadays, most of the applications, whatever we see, I think you might be even working on that same. I'm not sure. Most of the applications were data migration applications. Migration applications. Most of the applications, you can see everything were the migration applications. Means migrating from the legacy old systems on-premise applications to the cloud environment. So in the present condition, understanding about the existing on-premise architecture is so important because some applications, if you see somewhere around the mid 90s or late 90s, you see on early millennium time, you see most of the applications are that systems, whatever we used to at that point in time, not now, were completely mainframe based applications, mainframe based systems. And the architectures were also mainframe based architectures. Normally, different applications, mainframe based applications and architectures, and the kind of programming, whatever we use, will also be different. Even databases like DB2, right? So COBOL programming language. This is how earlier it was. So whenever there is a technology which is involved in mainframes, old legacy systems, that architectures were something old and complex. So most of the organizations nowadays are challenging day-to-day transactions because day-to-day transactions are also becoming challenging in some profiles, some industries where they have to see what sort of difficulties they may face in terms of the business and how to overcome, because every day is becoming a challenge for business, right? So because due to competition and any other reasons, all that. So most of the applications, if you see, all the applications were transforming from legacy applications to the new applications, new cloud environment. The reason why, if you can see closely, when we are talking about solution architecture, means prominently people know about is cloud architecture, right? So that's how generally our perception was built. Why cloud architecture? Because most of the applications are deploying and developing under the cloud environment. Hence, cloud architecture, cloud solution architecture from the cloud environment is what the perception was built. Of course, it can be AWS or it can be Azure or it can be any other cloud service providers like IBM or Google, but whatever it is, right? So end of the day, that's where generally cloud architecture. So when being a solution architect, when we want to transform, it is always important for us to understand about the cloud architecture. But whereas being a solution architect, we must be knowing about where our importances are. So these are the points which are essentially useful to develop solution means if you want to say that solution architecture important on what grounds. So this is based on these grounds, right? So these are the points which are essentially important when you are working on the solution architecture point of view. The first point about enabling system driving quality attributes, because providing quality attributes of the system is essentially required for any applications. End of the day, not only the user experiences, all that. Of course, end of the day, user experiences followed by the performance of the applications were also important. So, being into solution architecture, especially why solution architecture is important, because we want our systems to be enabled in such a way where it must be useful somewhere. It should have a quality attributes whatever are being implemented in this. This is where generally it is being used for. That is the reason why whenever we are working on solution architecture, means whenever we require solution architecture, doesn't mean that we need to enable system driving quality attributes is the one aspect we need to consider. Means why we want solution architecture to be developed for a application or solution. Second, Manage changes as the system evolves, right? So manage changes as the system evolves, because just now sometime back I told you, right? So earlier there were some on-premise applications, mainframe applications. Now we are transforming to the cloud applications. Why are we moving? For different reasons. One is to make our application more qualitative and qualitative in future. Point number one, it could be the one reason. Second reason, as long as managing the applications as well as organizations are highly cost wise, operational cost and all, everything were very high. So day by day, operational expenses are increasing for any organization. I'm not saying only IT, but usually right, everywhere. So nowadays, IT or systems or the applications are becoming an integral part of any business, because any business you take, everything is connecting to IT. Let's say, for example, being in our human life, we are being connected with different communication systems, right? So to send any messages to the people, we are using mobiles. If you want to send in official letters to the people, we are using email systems. So we have been bounded with all the technology. That's how generally individuals or organizations were connected with the technology. So when there is a technology which is involved, technology has a nature of change. Technology has a nature of change. This is a common process, because wherever the technology, concept of technology came into picture, you can see there is a change required. Change means upgrading. Upgrading to the next level is what is needed. So changes are something inevitable, especially when we are working on the application front. So whenever we want to make changes on our applications, we need to understand what sort of expectation a customer or an end user has. So managing changes as the system is evolving from an existing and to proposed or the future systems. This is where generally this concept of solution architecture is essentially needed whenever we are doing it. The third point is that we need to enable early prediction of system qualities, because it's not that understanding over the qualities not shouldn't happen after the implementation happens, right? So after completion of the solution or after completion of the development, right? So we shouldn't look for any system qualities, all that, right? So because once it was developed, it was developed, because the amount of time we have spent on that, the amount of effort we have made, application was developed. So whatever the quality we want to impart for the systems or the processes must be predicted early in the beginning time, whenever we have taken the requirements, business functional and non-functional requirements, whenever we have taken, at the time of translating these business requirements to the technical requirements. Again, I'm repeating. So there are some business requirements. These business requirements we want to transform to the technical requirements. I'll give you an example based on the case study which I have told you in the last session. I think this is more easy. So the reason why I've taken that. Let's say there was an existing traditional point of sale system and on-premise solutions customers are using. Now, there are two different problems they are facing. Let me put you this way. What are those two? One is about the system performance and second is data centralization. In this context of system quality, I'm talking about, right? So this is in connect to this, the reason why I'm explaining this point to you. Now, whenever we talk about system performance and data centralization, as the systems are very old, the traffic to the retail outlets and all, everything was increased nowadays, where there were very limited systems, and that too those limited systems were old configured. So automatically what will happen, system performance will come down in spite of completing a particular activity or a billing in 5 minutes. Usually it will take 15-20 minutes time. So due to that, what will happen, automatically people have to stand on queues for a very long time. So this may leads to decline in sales. This could be the possible impact for a retail store, right? This is one problem in reference to the system performance I'm talking about. Because how we got the project is what we need to understand. The reason I'm giving this example. Because being a solution architect, we need to understand the functional perspective also. End of the day, we are landed with technology. We are landing with technology, but functional perspective also should understand. The reason I'm explaining this. Second is data centralization, means they want to centralize the data where they want to, a business owner or someone like a project sponsor wants to collect uh, different reports regarding the performance of the sales, right? So which product is moving fast, which product is moving slow, right? So at what times we have more traffic to the store, right? So they want to know because they want to take some business decisions in their industry. They want to centralize the data, right? That is required. This is the first reason. The other reason is whenever we talk about data centralization, it also may require for a business owner where they wants to reach their future business goals. Let's say there is a retail store which is called X. As of now, they have one store. In future, they wants to extend their stores to somewhere around 5 to 6 in future. So when there are some 5 to 6 stores in different parts of the location, a customer wants to expand. Normal basic thing is that any business person try to see in what way reducing of this operational complexity. They want to reduce the operational complexity as much as they can because managing the servers, right? So firewalls at the same time data, right? So which is a big challenging task and in terms of the cost, in terms of the effort, in terms of all the means, right? So in all means. So what organizations have thought of, X retail store has thought that I want to centralize my data by connecting with different stores in different places so that I can centralize the data so that which product is moving faster at where, right? At what time we have more traffic, people who are coming for products to purchase. At the same time, um, um, where what kind of products are in shortage in regular intervals and all, because there must be to improve supply chain effectiveness to get the products on time. These are all required. So these are all for the business decisions. They want to centralize the data. So if they want to centralize the data or system performance or centralize the data, what is that they have to do? They need to improve the quality of the systems. Quality of the system to be improved in such a way where they want to go from legacy traditional point of sale system to the cloud application. In what way system quality will increase when you are going for a cloud environment? Because there are some cloud service providers who are as separate. So they will manage all the infrastructure. So whatever the infrastructure, either it can be infrastructure, it depends on the kind of services we have taken from the cloud service provider. So these services will be taken over by the cloud service provider on their own. But matter is different. The thing is different is that what kind of cloud services are we taking? Are we taking any public cloud or private cloud? It matters. So automatically system quality will also increase because when being an investor or a project sponsor who is investing some X amount of money for an application to be extended for the next level, that is for the benefit of the quality. Quality need not be systems all the time. Quality in terms of the service deliveries, what they are providing to their customers, that is also considered as a quality. If they want to provide a accurate quality deliverables to the customers and all, their systems must be having some quality enough systems they must be having. This is where the third point requires solution architecture. This is the third thing. Yeah. Next, enhance communication among stakeholders. As I told you, because stakeholders may be of different people. It can be technical people, right? So it can be functional people, it can be subject matter experts or investors or functional heads, it can be a business owner, it can be a project sponsor, right? So stakeholders of many people, right? So either it can be external people, some people who are externally supporting us from outside. Some people, internal stakeholders. Internal stakeholders means people who are supporting us from inside. This is where internal stakeholders come into picture. So we need to enhance the communication among the stakeholders, which is essentially needed because transparency of what is that are we developing as a solution must be known to everyone. Because if there is any defect in doing this, it reduces the failure of the project in long run. Because communication must be effective in such a way. Because as and when we are effectively communicating with all the stakeholders, so that we will be knowing about their perceptions, we will be knowing about their expectations, demands, constraints, all these. Right. So this is where generally developing a strong stakeholder management is something essentially needed for our applications because most of the projects even we see nowadays, not nowadays, usually whenever sometimes we see, I don't say regular intervals, sometimes I don't say failure, delay in project, delay in delivering the project. I don't call it as failure. Delay in uh, project deliverables. Uh, Reason could be sometimes reason can be that understanding lack of understanding between the stakeholders to address the requirements. That could be the major. That could be one of the major problem which normally we face. Because if you see, go back and say, just revise yourself so that you will be knowing this well. Because most of the projects, whenever we are working on, some projects will be delayed if you see closely. These could be for multiple reasons. One of the major reason is lack of communication among stakeholders. One of the major, I don't say this is only the reason. One of the reason is this because stakeholder expectations and their demands will change depends on the market dynamics and market situations. So stakeholders, especially from the point of technology point of view, I'm talking about technical stakeholders, should understand about what possibilities customer is expecting us to make changes, what are the possibilities for that, because end of the day we have to perform feasibility study. Either it can be budget level feasibility or it can be like a technical feasibility, right? It can be an operational feasibility, it can be a regulatory feasibility, because we have to, we means not being a technical solution architects I'm talking about, we as a team I'm talking, from the context of team I'm talking about. We as a team should understand about the feasibility study because customer have a lot of expectations over the solution what they are expecting from us. But end of the day, what is reality is different because there is a constant tussle between two things. One is about expectation, second is reality. If you see in your projects also, you might be facing the same problem. It's a generalized problem, of course. Not the two things. One is expectation and second is reality. Customer have some expectations. Reality is something different, right? So because always there is a tussle between these two. Expectations are different. Realities are different. Reality of what we are implementing, that is sometimes because of improper understanding also it happens because what customer has told and what we understood, what we have implemented, there is a lot of difference sometimes. Whenever we are going in a state of implementation, end of the day whatever we have implemented might be something different. So it's always important for us to enhance communication among the stakeholders is also one of the key elements. So for that, knowing about, so for that, developing solution architecture is also one of the key and core element whenever we are working on this solution. Next, we need to, we need to define set of constraints on subsequent implementations because this point I can say, see, when there is a regular implementation of solution are we developing, okay, So we need to set some constraints, because every solution, whatever are we providing, end of the day, it's a human intervention which is involved in it. Even though end of the day we are working on the technology, end of the day it's a human intervention, right? So human is involved in doing some activity there. There are some set of constraints which you have to define, because if you have not defined any constraints, whenever we are working on the implementation and all, there won't be any barrier for us to rethink over the quality of the deliverables what we are providing, because we have to set some constraints, right? What could be the possible, let's say the budget whatever was allocated for a project to be developed, and the solution what customer is expecting or what we are about to develop, if there are any differences between these two, what will happen? Sometimes the project will go under losses. That's the reason why, if you remember, we heard some names called cost failure project. If you heard, you might be heard about this name or not, I'm not sure. We call it as cost failure project. Sometimes it will be landed on the break even. That is point number one. That is agreed. So apart from cost break even, there can be cost failure also. Cost failure means failure in terms of the cost. Means what budget was allocated, what was allocated for as a budget, and what we have spent. There is a huge difference. So even though solution we have developed and given customer, is customer happy in terms of the deliverable, but in terms of the cost itself is concerned, it's a failure project. Failure project means cost overrun. Usually we call it as. So it is always important for us when we want to define, when we want to implement the project, subsequent implementations, we are working on the application towards the solution perspective. We need to define, always we have to define some set of constraints, because if you have not keep these constraints or the limitations to an extent possible, I don't say that these constraints should be extended to a limited possibility. These constraints has to be limit. We have to limit those. Unless until if you have not limited, what will happen when we are implementing the project? Whenever we are implementing the solution for a customer, there won't be any barrier, right? So any barrier to check whether to what extent it is feasible or not. So it's always for us, it is important for us to understand about the set of constraints. So when you are developing solution architecture, you come to know that, right? So what are the constraints do we have? It can be a technical constraint. It can be a regulatory constraint sometimes, because regulatory constraints means organizations have their own standards and procedures. So there are some possibilities where due to their policies, organization policies and all that. So there are some activities, or there are, for example, we want to access the servers or something, like there will be some barrier, right? So we may have a difficulty in accessing it due to the policies what organizations has, right? Because they have their own set of rules and guidelines which normally they follow. So it's always important for us to understand about what are the possible set of constraints. This is possible when we are developing the solution architecture, because we are translating our business requirements from the technical perspective. Whenever we are transforming this to the technical perspective, it is always important for us to understand about what are the possible set of constraints which are essentially required here. Next, it dictates the structure of the organization, because end of the day, because solution, if you have taken it as a reverse engineering, solution architecture is what you are developing now, for example. For solution architecture, prior to that, you need to have an understanding over EA, which is called enterprise architecture. Right, so this is so that we can dictate the structure of the organization, because what solution are we providing? In what way this solution has a connect with enterprise architecture, if any, underline this point, right? So if any, right? So is there any connect between enterprise architecture? Either it can be business level, it can be application level, it can be data level, or it can be system level, whatever it was. So in what way it is connecting to that is what something we need to see. This is where generally structure of an organization we need to understand. Dictate the structure of an organization is also possible, because solution end of the day, to whom are we developing? This is for the development for the purpose of the end user to use it online. So automatically it's a reflection, right? Whatever the solution you are developing, it's a reflection of the structure of the organization end of the day, but technically speaking, not from the functional perspective, technical perspective. So it dictates the structure of the organization. So this is possible through solution architecture. This is also important. The reason this is important. Next, basis of evolutionary prototyping. You know it, right? So because some customers expect us to develop some prototypes for the project. These prototypes, nowadays in the context of agile, we are using a word. What was that? Anyone? Ramakrishna or Anjali? So Aishwarya. Can you tell us what is that are we talking about nowadays? What was the meaning? Of course, I'm not 100% I'm relating. Nowadays, when we are transforming our applications or the approaches towards agile, for this prototyping, we are using another word. I'm not 100% relating to an extent possible. What was that? Any idea?
I'm not sure. No.
Ramakrishna?
Upgrading.
No? Because I'll give you an example to you, right? So let's say that you are working project in the agile side, right? You are working in the agile environment.
Okay.
Now, whenever you are working on the agile environment, there must be some goal, there must be some vision has to be defined by the product owner. But end of the day, being a team, either it can be a DevOps team or whatever the team, please reconnect again. It's about to disconnect. Please rejoin again. Please rejoin again.